Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the House of Kayfabe. It's an important day in the house because we're going to talk about house shows. There's a lot in the news right now about house shows. What's the future of house shows? Is AEW's house shows going to be a successful ticket draw for them? What's the future of house shows with the WWE? And most importantly, what are some of our favorite house show moments? We're Nerd Marks marking out here in the House of Kayfabe. I am Adam Harris, joined by the only Derek Jones. That matters. Derek, good evening. Great to be with you on the House of Kayfabe. Looking forward to hearing some of your house show memories.
Man, house shows are such a taboo thing because no one ever wants to agree on, are they good, are they bad, are they meaningful, are they not. But when you look at them as just an event, a lot of people kind of are iffy about them. But when you look at them for what they're truly meant for, house shows are such an important part of the wrestling world.
I completely agree.
and and I can play both sides of this. If you want to play pros, I'll play cons, or whatever whichever way you want to go about it. But while we're talking about history, we have to drop this little tidbit on you. 36 years, Big Gold made its debut on television.
As we're taping this,
36 years ago, Big
wow.
Gold made its TV debut, replacing the Globe Dome belt for the NWA, which is my favorite belt,
What we call
not
now
the
the
Big
10
Gold.
pounds of gold, right?
Yes, that's my favorite. But figured I'd go ahead and drop that little bit of history for you. I seen it on my timeline earlier, and I was like, man, that's
Nice.
pretty interesting.
I like
So
that. I like that. And that's cool. And that was cool to see the 10 pounds of gold during the Super Bowl. During that Fox News commercial,
yeah,
Tyrus was holding the 10 pounds. And I popped huge for that. There were a few wrestling things that came through on the Super Bowl. And that's because wrestling is life. You know that here on the House of Kayfabe. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe to the channel and check out everything that we've done on YouTube so far. Much more to come from the House of Kayfabe. So, what are house shows? I think it's probably obvious to a lot of the listeners. Most of you have bought a ticket to a house show. I guess, Derek, back me up here. It's a non televised event by a major wrestling company. And that's kind of what sets it aside from any show that you might go to that's like by an independent wrestling promotion. They may put that on DVD or it may be a live stream. Um, I don't know. When you start talking about GCW, most of their stuff is on pay per view. So I don't know how many non televised events they have, but probably some of what they do might be referred to as a house show. Um, Derek, I went to a house show in WWE here in Charleston, West Virginia, just last December. So they're starting to come back around a little more often. But I don't know about you, but my first show ever as a young man, it was February 14th, right about this time in 1992, when a 10-year-old Adam went to the Charleston Civic Center for a WCW house show. And so for me, it's impossible to think about a world without house shows. What was your first live wrestling? Was it a house show?
so I'm pretty sure. I don't think my first live wrestling was a house show, but I want to say my first WWE event that I ever went to was a house show because I want to say that I went to a WCW at the Civic Center prior to that. But my first WWE, then WWF event was a house show because at the time I always assumed that was a much bigger company for some reason. I felt like because WCW came to Charleston, it just felt smaller, in retrospect. But out of all the cool things that happened there, the one thing that stood out to me more than anything is I got to see Max Mini wrestle El Torito. The
Wow.
little guys, man, going at it.
Wow.
That I don't know why that stood out to me, even though The Rock was in the main event.
So what year are we talking here? What year is
This
this?
this would have been I
Mine
want to
was
say
92.
I want to say 97, 98 in
That sounds about right.
Huntington.
If Rock was on top. Okay.
Rock would have
Huntington,
been
West Virginia.
he would have been the IC champion tagging with Farouk. It was Nation of Domination time.
Nice.
That was the main event, but as a kid, like the standout to me would have totally been I want to call them midgets, might be insensitive, but
The
it
many
was
people. Yep. Yep.
yeah, the little guys wrestling. It was
How
awesome.
funny that even in like late 90s they were still putting the little guys I guess they were on TV at that time, right? El
Yeah,
Torito was definitely on TV.
yeah. Well, and Max Mini had the whole thing going on with Jerry the King for a little while. Like there was a lot happening there with him. He was kind of a big deal.
Well, and without that
Big
opportunity, you
deal.
never knew you wouldn't have been able to say you saw Max Mini, man, among
Right.
other people, right? You've got to see The Rock, like you
Yeah.
were there for The Rock,
Yeah.
man. I've definitely seen Shawn Michaels at a house show in Charleston, West Virginia as well. Glad I can say that. There's a lot of people that I've seen that I can say I would not have been able to see if not for these house shows. And I think that's kind of one of the purposes. And, often there's no advancement of storylines. They usually work within the confines of what's going on,
Hmm.
usually at house shows, but they don't exactly advance the storylines. But yet, I think they're important for other reasons. I think it's important to have the talent in front of eyes, in front of people in a live environment that's not necessarily on live television in
Right.
HD. Don't you think like that's essential to make helping people learn the craft, and especially in a WWE style?
Yes. And we talked about it a little bit in the opening of the video when you talk about what a house show is really for. You may think it's just a cheaper alternative to get the product in front of people, but a lot of times it's a way to work out the kinks of the match you're getting ready to tell on television.
Yeah,
You get
that's
to
right.
put it out there and test drive it and see how the fans react to it, because you get a true reaction when you put it out there first than what you would put out on TV. Because sometimes when you put something on TV in that live crowd, that live environment, people are going to love it no matter what. But a house
Absolutely.
show, you might not always get the reaction that you think you're going to, but you'll get a real reaction there.
And it can depend on the town,
Yeah.
right? Like every town, people talk about what a great wrestling town Charleston, West Virginia is, and that's where I live. And honestly, last weekend I got the honor to pick up Buff Bagwell and drove him down to Williamson for the ASW show. But he was talking about what a great WCW town Charleston was. Whether it was house shows or West Virginia in general, those guys did Huntington, and he remembered running Bluefield.
Yeah.
Bluefield, Virginia, and West Virginia. I think the Armory is in West
It's
Virginia.
in West Virginia.
And I wanted to bring this up on the podcast because I love collecting magazines, and programs and stuff. But like, I don't have very many programs, but I do. I love in the back of the PWIs. I love the older they are at a certain era of PWI, they start putting results in the back of the magazine listed by state. And so anytime there was a West Virginia show in there, I would always pop. And I found one that was from like, I want to say late 1991. And I think that timing would work out. A house show in Bluefield from West Virginia where Bobby Eaton wrestled Owen Hart.
Oh, wow.
Can you imagine if you'd have been in the audience in Bluefield, West Virginia, and you probably wouldn't have even known? Like, as a casual fan at that time, both those guys, maybe not even the most well known or most popular wrestlers, especially not Owen Hart. Bobby Eaton, pretty well known in 91. To be able to say you saw Owen Hart versus Bobby Eaton, there's probably only a few hundred people, maybe a few thousand. I don't know how many times they did that match, but they were there to see that match, man. What a cool memory that would be to have. And I think that's, again, why these things hold importance. My first show, again, like I've gotten to see and work with so many of the talent that were on that show in 1992, and it's so cool to know that Rick Steiner is still showing up and doing conventions. And God bless Tracy Smothers is another person I saw at the first show I ever went to. And you don't realize it then, but looking back on it, you're thankful for those moments, right? Like you're glad you saw The Rock.
Well, absolutely. Yeah. Even though, like I said at the time, I would have never thought that The Rock was going to be what he is now. You can't imagine things like that to happen, because honestly,
Yeah.
I was a fan of the Nation of Domination, but I was a fan of Farouk. So to me, seeing him at the time, that was the cool part of it. The Rock was just the guy in the group,
He was still like the second almost,
right?
Yeah.
But now, it's he doesn't really perform a whole lot anymore, and he truly didn't perform a ton. Like his length of time in ring wasn't astronomical by any
That's right.
means compared
Yeah,
to a
that's right.
lot of legends of professional wrestling. So to say you got to watch The Rock live at any time frame
Yeah.
is a really cool moment.
Almost every match counts. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? When it comes to The Rock's career. Another cool house show I was at, and you just made me think of this, but I actually saw Bray Wyatt wrestle as the WWE champion, which turned out to be a very short run. I want to say it was in between Royal Rumble and WrestleMania.
Yeah, that'd be right.
He had a match against Luke Harper, who is now passed away.
Right.
And so right there, I got to see, not only did Bray Wyatt defend the world championship, but it was against Bray Wyatt. I mean, it was against Luke Harper, who's no longer with us. So that's a guy I'll never get to see wrestle again. And so really thankful that I was able to witness that. And I didn't realize it at the time. Bray was the champ. I mean, we knew that. And I remember it being a big deal when Bray won the belt. I mean, we all thought that was a huge deal. we all probably thought it would last longer, and looking back on it. And so we didn't know how small that window was. Let me ask you this, Derek. Go ahead.
No, please.
Well, I wanted to make sure we talk about some other companies too, because I believe you've been to some TNA house shows. Is that right?
I have. And actually, so I went to Norfolk, Virginia, to a TNA house show. That was the first TNA show that I drove to myself. I just gotten to the point where I was allowed to drive that far away.
Nice.
Bought the tickets, drove. A friend of
Love
mine
it.
went with me. That's one of the best times I've ever had because I've been to the Impact Zone. I've been to Orlando to watch live TNA events. I watched a live pay per view in Kentucky where Chris Sabin won the world title. Like I,
Wow.
I've experienced a lot of cool wrestling, but I had really cool moments at a live TNA event in Norfolk, Virginia, just being able to interact that close. And that's probably one of the best parts about a live event is the talent is that fourth wall doesn't exist anymore
Mm-hmm.
because it's not about your camera audience. It's not about your hard cam. It's about the people in the arena. So they're a little bit more interactive. So
Mm-hmm.
having this great interaction with AJ Styles and Homicide in
Wow.
ring, just playing their characters was
Wow. What was the
amazing.
venue? Probably too small for the Norfolk scope, right?
Yeah, no, it was just a little armory arena. It wasn't
Okay. All
anything
right.
major. Yeah,
Wow, man, that sounds so cool and so fun, right? And
yeah,
again, the talent, they behave, and I guess maybe in some cases are given the permission to behave a little
a
differently
little more
in front of the
freedom.
house show audience. Yeah, much more freedom. I think they're allowed to be in some cases like slightly more goofy, or slightly just more themselves, quite
Right.
honestly. And what I love nowadays is like I think that they've loosened the reins a little bit on that because you see Bailey yakking it up with the audience all the time, and it's one of the things I love about her is that she's just getting heat at ringside,
Mm-hmm.
full force. And as an old school fan, we love that, right? Like we just love an old school jibber jabber to the audience. It's how you get your heat, in wrestling,
Yeah.
if I may. And you see that in such great form at house shows, at WWE, especially. The chains are a little bit off. You get to see, like, especially like the New Days of the world, the Kofis, the Biggies, the Xavier Woods, tons of fun at a house show. And I remember Dean Ambrose being one of the highlighted matches at a house show, a WWE house show. I think he was Intercontinental Champ at the time. But again, what an animated performance. And it was so much different than television, like noticeably different to marks like us. You can tell how much different their work is at a house show. And I think, did you notice the same kind of with TNA?
Yeah, it's completely different, and not even just their interaction during, but before and after. They're more involved with the fan aspect of it. The baby faces come out and sign autographs. That way, if you don't know who the good guys are before the show starts, it's the guys
Oh,
you got to talk to before it
there you go.
happened. The ones that didn't want to come out, well, those are the jerks. Those are the guys I wanted the autograph from, but they didn't want to come out. So I'm going to boo the crap out of them when they come through the curtain. Um, and then, I talked about the show in Norfolk, but here in Beckley, we had several TNA live events. And one of the best parts about them was being able to interact with guys like Don West and Jimmy J.
Wow.
They're selling merchandise, but in reality, they're selling the personalities of the guys you're getting ready to see and interact with because they put over the good guys more than anybody. They let you
Nice.
know these guys are here. They're going to come
Nice.
out. They're going to do their thing. Like it's a much more freeing environment to express that personality type.
And I think that it's so cool that Don West like knew that was his job, but also to make you glad you came.
Yeah.
Like you spent your hard-earned money to come here and see the WWE or the TNA talent. And especially with TNA's case, they wanted to be grateful for that. Make sure you had the time of your life. Make sure they offered access, like you're saying. Like I think that's probably one of the things that TNA had going that they had going for it was that they were able to offer that access to guys who were stars for them, but yet it was up close and personal in a small, intimate environment.
Mm-hmm. and and a
What
lot of
else?
a lot of times you'll get to see younger up and coming guys that haven't had a whole lot of TV time really get to work out their matches and have in ring time at a house show. So
For sure.
during the TNA gut check days, I got to see live and actually meet and interact with, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to give me crap for this, but I was a fan. I don't care about the Me Too movement and all this other BS that goes on in the world. If your feelings are hurt, your feelings are hurt. Get over it. I got
Leave it
to
in the
meet and
comments.
yeah, I got to meet and interact with Joey Ryan, and and
Interesting.
and
Oh,
I
okay. Yeah, sure.
and and people can say whatever they want to about the guy, but like I messaged him online when I knew they were coming and said, "Hey, I'm a fan. Love what you do." He said, "When you get here, um, send me a message on Instagram. Let me know you're here." As soon as I got there, the guy come out. He brought me a T-shirt. I have an action figure up here of Joey Ryan
Nice.
that he autographed. I didn't pay a dime for this stuff.
Nice.
He was just interacting with fans. He
And that's part of, again, the importance of the house shows, man, is that this is these guys building their own brands, and good for Don West for putting them over.
yeah,
And this is where it has to happen. It doesn't always start on television. Not everybody just gets handpicked and placed into a gimmick that works for them.
right.
Not even The Rock had a gimmick that worked for him when he started.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, you sometimes see talent that you don't see on before they're on television. And I can't think of a good example at the moment, other than last time WWE was in town, we saw Madcap Moss and Emma versus Karrion Kross and Scarlett. And Scarlett hasn't wrestled many times. And so that's another cool thing to say. Like, we got to see, and a couple of people even commented on my Instagram, wow, you saw a Scarlett match or whatever, because she has not had very many in-ring matches with WWE. And so we saw one, and I think she wrestled in Wheeling, West Virginia as well. But then about a month later on the House of Kayfabe chat, we were like, hey, here's that match that I saw in December. Now it's happening on Monday Night Raw, and they did a mixed tag match on Monday Night Raw. So again, like you were saying, sometimes you just got to use that as the way of testing, feeling it out, figuring out the roadmap that's going to work best once it does come time to throw it up on television. And speaking of television, AEW is a company that has only yet so done television and pay-per-view, had yet to do house shows, but they're venturing into that. And also WWE, as we all know, house shows have been an important part of their formula all these years. But are they going to remain an important part when the WWE eventually sells to another company? And we were talking about house shows, and they've always been an important part of wrestling, an important part. And it used to be actually, I was just thinking about this, the TVs used to promote the house shows, kind of. I mean, back in the territories days, on TV was your jobber matches. TV was your long form, grappling matches. And not that I lived through any of this, but looking back on it now, that's where you built your stars, and you enticed people with the storylines to go buy a ticket and see the people in those house show events. It almost seems like wrestling can't exist without house shows. But yet, the second part of our conversation is AEW has yet to do a house show. They've existed on pay-per-view and television. But there's also the question of, is it a good business decision? Is that business model something that a company that, let's say, is going to buy WWE, is it something that's feasible? Is it something that makes realistic sense for $1 million company to do on the regular? Derek Jones, what do you think about, first of all, about AEW and the idea that they're venturing into house shows?
So let's be honest. AEW started with a house show and a t-shirt company. That was the running joke for a long time, was it was a t-shirt company, but it started with a house show. It started with a live event. It was all in, and it was potentially the biggest non-televised live event that had been put out there, and it was one of the best events that I think I've ever attended. Um, so why would you not try to continue that success? Why would you not, even if for no other reason than you put a house show in a city that you've never worked, in a state that you haven't had a lot of success in? Why not put house shows there to try to build that little bit of traction and get
Great
some
point.
more eyes on your product?
That's a great point. Yeah, I mean, especially for a company that's still relatively young like AEW, they haven't been able to go to every market. They just went to Portland for the first time.
Right.
And so that's a big deal to go to the Pacific Northwest and do your first shows on television, I mean, that's a huge deal. And I think they did okay. They drew good, and I think they're finding their best crowds are in the new demos now. I think that's where they're gaining the most interest. But you're right. This is a good way of kind of testing those waters. My question, and maybe as a devil's advocate here, is if so many people gripe about the television product and the storyline, and so many people are easily disappointed with AEW, it seems, Are they just asking for it? Like, could a house show be? Could it live up to our standards for AEW? What would you expect is going to be going down in the first AEW house shows?
So the first few house shows need to be very similar to your TV product for AEW, because you need to put the names of people that are going to be on your television product in front of these people that may not get to see everything or go to these live events just yet, because they're going to want to know, if I go to this show, how am I going to continue to see these people? And then you'll slowly start to introduce, your people from AEW Dark and AEW Elevation, and
Mm-hmm.
eventually build it into something a little bit different. And the great thing, WWE had a great formula for this for a long time. On Monday night you had Monday Night Raw, but you also had the SmackDown crew running a house show somewhere close.
That's right.
Um,
On the same night. Yeah, on
on
the same night.
on the exact same night. So the whole company would travel. Um, you might be 30, 45 minutes up the road doing the live event, and over here you're doing TV, but that way everybody could travel at once and still kind of stay on the same path and trajectory. And then come Thursday, Friday, we're doing the opposite. SmackDown's on TV and Raw, their guys are running the live event. So AEW could eventually build to that, because there is a very different dynamic between Dynamite and Rampage. Sometimes there's guys that don't float a lot between the two. Hook is the
Mm.
king of Rampage. You don't see him on Dynamite a whole lot. He hasn't integrated there yet in different ones.
That's a
So
great point.
you
Yeah.
can have those separate rosters kind of float together, but still have the house show along with the televised events.
And Dynamite is a little more compact too, and I think because of that, we're getting a little more character action because it's little less time for wrestling, a little more time for building characters.
Mm-hmm.
My fear is that it's going to be, Elevation Dark 2.0 or something. Is that they're going to be putting too much green talent out there, and some of the dark stuff is okay, it's good, and a lot of it uses indie talent that we're used to seeing,
Mm-hmm.
at some of the smaller shows, not in a bad way, but the regional shows. And so that would be my fear, is that it's going to be quality over quantity. And because you've also got to kind of spread your stars out a little bit too. You're not going to be able to put the Young Bucks and Kenny Omega and, any other stars on the same card necessarily. It's going to be one or two, might be a Samoa Joe or a Wardlow, but you may not be getting the Young Bucks, or a Kenny Omega.
And eventually, things like that will be okay. But like I said in the beginning, they're going to have to put those guys in these arenas. They're in the armories
That's
and
true. You got to sell
whatever
tickets.
whatever type of venue they're going to run. Because again, you've got to build that base of people knowing, when I go to an AEW live event, I'm not getting shortchanged by watching the YouTube show in
That's
front
right.
in an arena. So they're going to have to think that through at first before they really start to change it into anything different.
Well, and it's interesting. I think something came out this week about how Cody Rhodes has been added to some house shows for WWE, and it's seeing an upsell in tickets, which is so fascinating to think about. Was that somebody that would be, is that somebody that you would think as being as a household draw for AEW, but yet now here he is drawing tickets on the WWE house shows. I mean, so fun to see. We've got just a couple minutes left here, Derek, but I want to go ahead and talk about WWE and the house shows. Like they can't go away, right? Like if somebody buys the WWE, what do you think happens to the house shows?
The only other thing that may happen with the house show, and honestly, AEW has been doing this for a little while now. If they want to go that route, is you have a WWE dark style show or a WWE elevation style show where you run a YouTube program out of a soundstage, because that's what they do for most of it. Is it's ran out
Yeah,
of a soundstage. Some of it
yeah.
is pre-recorded at some of
Mm-hmm.
the TV tapings.
And WWE main event is not that different from Dark or Elevation, really. They tape it pre-show or post-show, and it's kind of like somewhat jobber matches, or
Mhm.
quicker matches.
Right. Um, but what they're going to have to do is they're going to have to lower ticket prices on it if they want to put more people in these arenas. Because I tell you, sometimes the
That's a good point.
daggone ticket prices for a live event compared to a televised event is there's not a whole lot of difference.
That's true.
You
Yeah,
know,
that's
they
true.
they've gotten a little out of hand on the pricing on that.
And
So
that's tough for the family, man. And that's one of the things I wanted to say earlier is that 92, when I went to my first house show, God bless my aunt who took me, my cousin, and his brother, three kids, and a fourth person. That must have cost a lot of money back then. And I don't remember if we ate. We definitely picked up some merch, you
Right.
know, and that's got to be a challenge. And yet, you want it to be affordable for the average everyday family who maybe can't go to a TV taping. But it does seem like you're right, man, that the tickets are kind of in that same neighborhood now.
Mhm. I think that's one thing that AEW has done very well at is keeping their ticket prices very reasonable from the beginning. They haven't fluctuated a whole lot. I know that I set um, it was one of the last shows prior to COVID. I went to Cleveland and I sat front row
Wow.
um, for $100, $120
For AEW?
for AEW. Yeah.
Wow.
It was a great show. I mean, it was AEW uh AEW Dynamite. And,
Well, and the production value can be slightly less for house shows, especially for WWE. And I think that's the challenge they have to meet is like you want to meet expectations of people that you've only seen on television, but yet you can't put all of the same lights and trucks and everything into just producing a house show. You have to strike this balance. And I think that's why it's going to be some hard for some companies to see this as a financial positive for a company that's trying to make money is like if you have to present it in such a way that's similar to TV, but yet it's not as expensive as television. I think that's a huge challenge for whichever company. We've talked about Disney on Ice, man, in the House of Kayfabe chat. We may have to talk more about house shows on the House of Kayfabe. I would love to hear some more opinions from some of the other residents on the House of Kayfabes. I hope you'll leave an opinion here on the House of Kayfabe YouTube channel. Check us out over on all the social medias, especially subscribe to the podcast. We'll be back there soon. But for now, this is Adam Harris, joined by Derek Jones, the only Derek Jones that matters. And we're signing off, talking house shows on the House of Kayfabe. See you soon.